forget it. Another time. So what is plagiarism? Well, why not cite your sources? If you got it from something, go ahead and cite it. I'm absolutely convinced that nothing I say is my own idea. I've gotten it from somewhere else. And if I can remember where it came from, I'll tell you. If it's so embedded in my mind that I think of it as like, well, everybody ought to know this. It's kind of like the statement, there's nothing new under the sun. But actually, if you think about it, when she first wrote that, that's actually kind of hysterical if you know biblical. Never mind. When she first wrote that, she was either wrong, because here she is coming up with a brand new thing to say. There's nothing new under the sun. And so that was new. So she was wrong. Or she was stealing it from someone else that she had already heard it from. So that's just funny, right? But that's Ecclesiastes, if you're familiar with that. But basically, I don't really know what plagiarism is. In fact, if you're using code, typing code for a project, if you're into computer coding, which, by the way, it's an endangered job, because I read just the other day that AI developments are going to basically do away with the need for computer coders, which is bad, because that was like one of the few jobs you could really become pretty rich in doing if you were really good. Not clear about that, but AI might do that job. But it might also be that if you know how to use AI in order to do the job, you might just get even richer faster. So there's possibilities there. But even when you're doing code, you're using software saying, oh, give me this here, give me this button here, give me this here, etc. And you didn't write the code for all of that. So you're taking code that somebody else already did and using that as part of your work. So is that plagiarism or not? Did J.K. Rowling steal the word muggles from someone else? Yes. Actually, no. It's yes and no. The court decided she didn't steal it, but it's pretty clear that she was familiar with another British author that had used the word muggles in a similar kind of story. So yes and no. Okay. This is fun, by the way. If you get a chance, Ringworks is a dialectizer. So if you want to take a text and put it in that paragraph, and you can run it through, and you get it back in redneck or jive. This is an old site, by the way. It's been there for years, but it's just hilarious. And I took something that I ran through where's the other one? It's Ringworks. So this one, another website, is called the Dada engine. So if you go to the Dada engine and just click on the site, you get a term paper. Notice you've got your title. You can change the name because it's not really that author, and so on. But what you have here is an entire term paper, complete with citations, etc. And does it make sense? Society is intrinsically impossible, says Sontag, Susan Sontag. However, according to Brophy, it is not so much society that is intrinsically impossible, but rather the economy of society. Many situationisms concerning Derrida's reading exist. It could be said that Derrida promotes the use of pre-material deconstruction to attack the status quo. Believe it or not, if you're into postmodernism, that makes sense. Notice, however, if I click on this website and refresh it, I have a completely different term paper. It never repeats. So by the way, if you turn this in as your work, a teacher would not be able to determine that you plagiarized it because it's not there accessible on the internet. Notice if I refresh it again, it's still another term paper. Once in class, I had several people with their laptops click on that same website and they both got the same paper at the same time. That only happened once. So it's kind of fascinating. So this is the Dada engine. There's a little story associated with it. A scientist was absolutely convinced that postmodernists, which is a type of philosophy that comes mostly from France, it's not only there, but it's a French thing, kind of like a latter-day existentialism. But postmodernists, as they write in sentences and paragraphs and talk about these kinds of things like they do here. If you're familiar with Noam Chomsky thinks it's absolutely ridiculous nonsense. Well, Dr. Sokal also thought it was nonsense. So he wrote the original Dada engine and used it to create a postmodernist paper and offered it to a postmodernist journal that accepted it for publication. At the same time that the journal published his article, he published an article in a science journal explaining what he had done to them. And the whole scientific world reading this thought, yay, he's demonstrated that postmodernists are just spewing nonsense. Makes no sense. Interesting problem was a couple of MIT students took that Dada engine and used science as their background for the article, ran it through the Dada engine, and it came out with a scientific article. They sent that scientific article to a scientific journal, and the scientific journal accepted it for publication. In other words, science is also jargon-based. You can become a fluent speaker of that jargon, and you can create your own paragraphs, etc. And it sounds good to the people that are fluent speakers of that language. Same as the postmodernists. Very interesting. When we talk about what is epistemology, what do we know? We clearly know how to fluently speak the language of the groups that we participate in. Kids speak particular ways that they know is appropriate when they're speaking with other kids their age. They change when they speak with adults that they know. They change when they speak with adults that they don't know. In other words, kids know the right language. Have you heard this kind of stuff before? Remember, even as a kid, I don't remember how to play Ring Around the Rosie and things. But there are kids' games that kids teach one another, and then you forget them by the time you go to college. In fact, my first quiz question for you is a memory question. Send me when you get home, or actually a lot of people email me their quiz responses during class, which is fine, right? How many of the 10 Commandments do you know? And by the way, if you never memorized those as a kid, you can pick something else you memorized as a kid and send me that. And the interesting thing that what I've discovered, in fact, I'll go to here, go down to my class notes, other items. So if you're curious where the Ten Commandments are, there's the two tablets. I found them one day when I was visiting a church, and this was the room where the religious education was, and those two tablets were sitting there. People are still looking for those. It's hilarious. I used to keep statistics on how many people got how many right. Whoa, I'm locked on the screen here. These are incorrect. Thou shalt not steal from thy neighbors. Nope, that's not one of them. Thou shalt not kill your neighbors. That's not one. Thou shalt harm thy neighbor. No, not one. Should not steal. What's wrong with that one? Steel is the metal. Steel that they mean should have meant was S-T-E-A-L. Different kind of steel. You look like this is serious. Are you unbelieving that anybody would not know these? By the way, on the Sunday comics, there was a comic that showed a particular ex-president talking about, yes, you have a question?
You said that if you didn't memorize the Ten Commandments as a kid, you could say whatever you memorized.
You can.
So, like ABCs works? Or
ABCs?
Yeah, like alphabet, right? So,
Do you do it as Alpha, Bravo, Charlie?
I mean, I don't know, like months and the year. I don't know, stuff like that. Does that work too?
You pick it.
Really? That works.
You pick it. I don't mean by that you have to use you-pick language. That happened to me. My wife said, "What would you like for your birthday?" I said, "You pick it." She bought me a you-pick dictionary. It's really handy, though. I've learned some interesting things from it. I have an Athabascan dictionary as well. It's much more difficult. So yes. My answer should always be yes. Unless, well, remember, call me Bill. You could call me anything you like except late for dinner. You get it? All right. Well, so there's lots of wrong commandments because theoretically there are correct ones. These are my favorites that I've received from students. Thou shalt not worship idol gods. Those gods are the ones that don't do anything, they're just idle. You look shocked.
I don't understand what these commandments, like, where I'm from, I don't have 10 commandments and I don't understand these. That's why I'm shocked.
Oh, or you could even do them in Spanish or whatever. Yeah. However, I'm trying to read Harry Potter in Spanish too, and I thought, Spanish, that's kind of like French, so I should be able to figure it out. Well, darn, those Spanish people have a word for everything.
Yeah.
That's a Steve Martin joke, by the way. It's just, so for our first quiz, just so we don't forget, send me what you remember the 10 Commandments, and then if you remember 6 but not 10, you could send me what you find on the internet. And what's interesting is if you have memorized them when you were a kid, but you can't remember them now. That's really interesting, because I have a theory that we never forget anything. Even the appearance of your shoelaces when you were tying them this morning is actually still in your brain. It's just whether you can recall them on demand or not. That's harder, right? And the comics showed an ex-president talking about how thrilled he was. He says to a friend, "Have you ever read them? The first 4 are really great." That means he's a Protestant, by the way, because in the Roman Catholic system, they only have the first 3 are associated with